As the cliche goes, April showers bring May flowers. But usually what comes after is the heat and dryness of summer. Hello again, Essay here. And before the hot weather of the holiday shows up, you should indulge in my new short story, The White Cat, a free exclusive on Substack. The links are down below in description. Join Margot Thompson, a beautiful stage actress and recent widow who finds salvation in the form of a white cat during a night of terror. While checking out my oddball thriller, remember that my Glitch series is still available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. The links are down below in the description. While you'll find my peculiar story about a white pussy entertaining, that doesn't mean I'm out of ideas. I still have more stories coming down the pike, so as long as I don't run into any mishaps, you'll see those stories as well. Now let's get back to the video.
Miss Solar System, brought to you by Spacely Sprockets. Whee! Oh, you know, I've always wanted to be a television sponsor. You can cause so much panic. I think I'll start with Jetson. He should be working at his desk. Not there. I bet I know where he is. Just as I thought, at the water cooler again.
And now, fellow employees, I would like to read you my latest company bulletin. It's titled 101 Ways to Goof Off at the Office and Still Collect Overtime.
Jetson! What are you doing?
Goof it off, sir!
Report to my office.
Yes, sir. Oh, boy, the boss sure sounded mad. You call, sir?
Why? Why do I put up with you?
I don't know, sir. I mean...
Hello again. Essay here. What is work ethic? Well, it depends who you ask. Now, some people, they have it in spades. I've seen it. People who basically get up early in the morning, skip breakfast, go work real hard, and don't take off for lunch, and they come home triple dog tired. And if they're married, or at least have a significant other, they feed them their evening meal, and they go right to sleep, and then they wake up the next morning and do it again. Yeah. In other words, no vacation time for them. Yeah, in fact, my father was like that. Yeah, because I was growing up, we weren't wealthy, to say the least, and we only went on vacation twice during the whole time I was growing up. Once we went to San Francisco. Actually, we went through San Francisco and we got almost to Portland, Oregon, but then for some reason we turned around and went back. And then we went on vacation another time later on to Chicago. And no, we didn't fly first class. We went in the station wagon. And we drove all the way from California to Chicago to visit our relatives. And then we made a pit stop in Detroit before coming back through Tennessee to visit some more relatives. And then all through Texas and New Mexico and Arizona on the way back. In fact, we almost drowned in Texas because my brother, he was a teenager at the time, and my parents let him drive the station wagon, and we got to Amarillo, Texas, and there was thunderstorms and flash flood warnings, and it was 90 degrees outside. And we got to that town, and the water was coming up to the damn bumpers on the damn car. And I remember my mom said that my brother Larry wanted to give the wheel to my dad, and my dad kept telling him to keep going, because my mom said if they stopped, that water would have picked us up and carried us downstream, and that would have been the end of everything. But anyhow, there's some people who like to skate through life, put in the bare minimum. Why? Well, it depends. Because, for example, ever heard the phrase the idle rich? Well, that's true. Ever heard of Huntington Hartford? I have. In fact, you may have heard a company they used to control, Hartford Insurance. I remember reading that story years ago, where the original old man started the company, but by the time the grandchildren got around to it, they basically were a bunch of wastelers, and they basically blew the whole wad. And they weren't the only ones. Ever heard of Cornelius Vanderbilt? Same thing. In fact, you probably are familiar with Cornelius's great-grandson, Anderson Cooper. And you say, wait, what? Yeah. Anderson Cooper, his great-grandpappy is Cornelius Vanderbilt, the damn shipping tycoon from the 19th century. And indeed, Cornelius was a super rich guy. In fact, one of the biggest mansions in the whole damn world, Vanderbilt built, and it still exists today. I think it's called Biltmore. I forgot where it was. I can't remember if it's in New York or in the Carolinas, but yeah, huge mansion. Of course, Anderson Cooper doesn't live there anymore. In fact, he never did, but whatever. But yeah, after old Cornelius died, the children took over, and they basically made a mess of things. And then, when Anderson Cooper's mother became an adult, in fact, you may have heard of her, Gloria Vanderbilt. Yeah. That woman used to be, I think she used to be a clothes designer back in the 70s. Yeah, that's Anderson Cooper's mother. By the time she became an adult, the Vanderbilt fortune was gone. All of it. Pissed away. And then she had to go, and then old Gloria, she had to go out and get a real job. But of course, there are some people who are wastelers who are not rich. People who basically are idle. And believe me, I've seen a lot of those. I see them all the time on the street. In fact, you probably call them homeless. And I'm thinking, yeah, true. Now, of course, some of you are saying right now, but oh, those people are miserable. Yeah, miserable by their own hand. Okay, are we clear? Now, of course, some of them do have a screw loose. I'll concede that. But a lot of them, they choose to be homeless. Don't believe me? Ask old Timmy. In fact, the old Timmy, he's got a video about idle people. But these people, let's just say this, they have no reason to be idle. They choose to be idle. Okay, are you ready? Here we go.
We got this one from the Daily Mail. Bosses are firing Gen Z workers in record time. Yeah, checks out. Now, hold on there a minute. I'm a big Gen Z proponent. I'm a fan of Gen Z. Gen Z is the only thing that matters right now. Okay, not really. Gen Alpha matters a little bit more than Gen Z, but I'll tell you this. I'm 38. All right? So I'm in my time, as I would describe it. As a 38-year-old, I've got probably, I think, a good reasonable, I don't know, maybe 27 years where I think it's reasonable for me to be heavily involved in the industry, running the things that I run and working until I retire and say, look, I'm an older guy. Older people start dying out, and you got to hand everything down to the younger generation. That being said, as someone who is 38, there's a reason why you and I, as individuals of this age or older, there's a reason why we do what we do. This is the purpose of life and society. Our job as young people, when we're in our 20s, is to do the work to help maintain these machines, develop resources, raise our families, and build. Once we get a little bit older, we are to maintain these machines, but be leaders to the younger generation to show them how it's done, to provide them with an opportunity to take over. Once I'm in my 60s or whatever, I can be a professor or whatever, talk about my experiences, consult, share information that may be beneficial to the younger generation. But the older you get, the more of what you do is for the younger generation. And so, if Gen Z workers are failing and being fired, we're in serious trouble. They will inherit the reins of society. And if they don't know what they're doing, society falls. And that is our fault as an older generation. I'm not going to blame millennials for everything, but millennials do suck, by the way. And everyone always goes, but Tim, you're a millennial. Yeah, I know. And millennials suck. Come on. We're allowed to say that because we're millennials, right? The millennial generation is largely entitled and lazy. Gen Z is a little bit better, but there's a problem with Gen Z workers not being prepared adequately by the older generations. They should be able to have houses, white picket fences, and families. And hearing that they're getting fired in record numbers is not good for anybody. Nobody should be gloating. We should be worried about this. But let's read. They say companies are axing Gen Z workers just months after hiring them fresh from college, a new report has found. 6 in 10 employers had already fired some college graduates they had recruited earlier in the year, a survey conducted by Intelligent.com found. 1 in 7, the employers said they might also not hire fresh college grads next year after finding a raft of problems with young workers. I'm going to pause and say the problem is college. There you go. Business leaders listed concerns in areas such as communication skills and professionalism that made them wary of hiring Gen Z. They also said that workers of that age are often unmotivated and need to be constantly told what to do rather than using their initiative. It's another issue. That's college, not Gen Z. I got stories for you. Some of you may have heard. Many recent college graduates may struggle with entering the workforce for the first time, as it can be a huge contrast from what they were used to throughout their education journey. Remember when I told you guys this 7 years ago? Remember when I told you this stuff 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 years ago? They are often unprepared for a less structured environment, workplace cultural dynamics, and the expectation of autonomous work. 3/4 of companies surveyed said some or all of the recent graduate hires were unsatisfactory in some way. Half said their Gen Z hires had a lack of motivation, making them difficult to work with. The survey was posted on Reddit. Under the subject, companies are quickly firing Gen Z employees, prompting one user to write, yeah, checks out. However, HR consultant Brian Driscoll argued that it's not just young employees that are presenting a problem, but the education system itself, which is not preparing its graduates for the working world. College is the problem. Stop sending your kids to these institutions which rot their brains and make them incapable of holding jobs and preparing themselves for the world. I've been warning about this forever. One wrote, as a millennial working with Gen Zs, I have to admit that I've told a couple not to wear their bizarre, trendy, dirty 90 filas to work. I literally never thought that would have been appropriate in an office environment as a young person. One said, they have issues showing up every day where I work, so it's mainly attendance problems. They've been purposefully putting out videos being like half-assed on purpose, don't even bother. What do they call it? There was a term for this. They had a phrase where it was something about doing the bare minimum and only showing up when they make you do it. As someone who went through years of education, including law school, I can tell you this: colleges are not preparing students for real-world work. All right, story time, because not everybody has heard these stories. I'll give a couple more of these quotes. Education today emphasizes theory over practice. Sure, learning Greek mythology is fascinating, but unless you're teaching it, how does that prepare you to communicate effectively in a corporate meeting? Instead of teaching new hires what they want from them, employers are simply firing workers for not being prepared. It's a cyclical issue that reflects systemic failure on multiple levels. All right, let's start with story number 1. Some of you may know this. Quit quitting Quiet quitting. That's what it was. Quiet quitting. That's what people. Yep, that's what it was called. Quiet quitting was where you decided you would no longer do the work, but you would do nothing and keep collecting money until they were forced to let you go. Yeah, quiet quitting. Awful. Here's a story for you. I worked for a company, and they told me you should hire somebody. You'll need someone who can coordinate and work with you, a producer, et cetera, et cetera. I said, okay. And so I had a friend, and they were brilliant, and they had a couple degrees. And I said, oh, here we go. I know this person. And so I said, hey, do you want to do this job? Here's what you got to do. And they said yes. And then they couldn't do it. It was funny because there would be some administrative error, and they'd reach out to me and be like, hey, I'm having an error here. And I'd be like, figure it out. And they'd say, I don't know how to do it. And I said, so figure it out. And they were like, how do I, and I'm like, are you joking? I don't run these systems. I'm in the field filming. Your job is to do the administrative back end so that the office liaises with you for the administrative paperwork and things like this. And they were just like, no one taught me how to do it. And I said, you need to figure it out. If I knew how to do it, I wouldn't have hired you. And so it eventually came to a breaking point where ultimately I was like, dude, I don't know if you should be fired because you can't figure this job out. But if you're saying that you can't figure it out, maybe you should work in the mailroom where there's nothing to figure out. And it was kind of funny. You know what I learned from this is that colleges are, if someone goes to school their whole life and then goes to college and then gets a job, the only thing they know how to do is what they are told. So the other story I have for you is a buddy of mine was running a marketing company, and I know many of you may have heard the story, but it's pertinent to this for those that haven't heard it. So he hired a couple college grads to run social media, and they failed. They kept calling him, what do we do? Oh no, one of our clients made a mistake on social media. It's getting out of hand. And he'd tell them, like, just handle it. And they'd be like, I don't know how. You're fired. The job was to manage social media accounts. You don't know how to do it. You shouldn't work here. Like, I'm not going to hire a plumber to be a carpenter. You know what I mean? If you don't know how to do it, what are you doing here? Hired another couple college grads. Same problem. Hired another. Same problem. And he told me, he's like, I ran out of money. I kept hiring these people and they weren't doing the job and it was costing me money and my budget was going down and my revenue was going down. And I was like, holy crap. If I'm going to keep this business going, I need to hire somebody. So he said he went on Craigslist and just said no longer did he look for a college degree. I can't afford to pay these salaries anymore. They screwed it all up. So he said, $12 an hour, social media manager, anyone apply. He said he found a couple people who had moved to California. They wanted to be actors. And he hired them and said, you got to manage social media for these various companies, the restaurants and such. And then he said he goes out to do business meetings to sell more clients. Not a single phone call. He gets kind of worried. He's like, these people are not trained. They're not college grads and they're not calling me. He's like, I think I'm going to come back to the office and it's going to be the place is on fire. He shows up, walks in and says, what's going on? And they're like, not much. And he's like, everything good? And they're like, all good. And he's like, really? Yep. And he's like, did you have any problems? Nope. And he's like, did anything happen today? Like, what's going on? Like, oh yeah, one of the clients posted a picture that pissed people off, but we just took care of it. And he was like, what? Really? And they're like, yeah, we just had him take the picture down, told him to do something different and just not do it again. And he was like, cool. And he was like, I realized something. High school dropouts who moved to California were sure of themselves. They knew what they needed to do and they were trying to figure things out actively. College graduates had no gumption, couldn't function without being told what to do. And then, in fact, that's why they went to college in the first place, because they were told to do it. And he was like, so it's kind of crazy. It's cheaper to hire people who didn't go to college. They're better at the job, more likely to figure out the problems and improve their skills. I'm making more money now. And I was like, yeah. I have another story for you. I knew this dude who, this is really funny. He was getting paid $27,000 a year as a web developer. Since he was a kid, he had been learning how to code websites because he was passionate about it. He wanted to make websites. He wanted to program them, and he started learning it. And so he goes to a company, and he applies for the job, and he gets an interview. He sent in his portfolio. They look at the work he's done. He's proficient in these coding languages. And they went to him, and they were like, I think he was 19. And they were like, we can pay you $27,000 a year. And he went, holy crap, really? And they were like, yep. And he was like, okay. And they were like, awesome. And they explained to him. They were a small company with limited clients and a very thin profit margin. And every web dev that came in with a college degree said 27 is too low. Granted, this is probably 14, 15 years ago, maybe 16 years ago, and in Chicago. And they said, I need 35 because I got to pay off my student loan debt. And he was like, we can't afford to pay you 35. We don't have 35. We don't have the clients to do that. And even if we hired you, the amount of work you do would barely make any profit for the company at all. So we would just be losing money if we hired you. So they said, no, not interested. Then along comes this 19-year-old kid who's like, 27 works for me. I'm a high school dropout. And they're like, we've seen your work. You can do the websites. You know how to do it. You've done it. And you can pay what we can afford you. Welcome to the company. That's it. It's remarkable. College is rotting the brains of people. And they are convinced. And look at these Democrats and how they vote. They are convinced they're right. That's the terrifying thing. Dunning-Kruger effect. I went to college. That means I'm smart. And then they do this thing where they're like, Tim Pool is so stupid. He didn't even go to high school. And I'm like, have you stopped to ask yourself why I run a successful business with between 30 and 40 employees and contractors, owning multiple properties, expanding? Like, these are the people who say Donald Trump's an idiot. Donald Trump is not an idiot, and neither is Mark Cuban. They're both very smart men who are really good at what they do. That's why they're wealthier than you. Don't get me wrong. You can be the greatest guitar player in the world and not make a lot of money off it. Being good at making money is a skill in and unto itself. But to claim that these widely successful people are stupid is a bad move. You can be mad at Mark Cuban for the things he posts politically and be like, this guy is dumb as a box of rocks. Yes, when it comes to political stuff, maybe that is, or maybe it's intentional. But the idea that in a general sense, you'd say Mark Cuban is legitimately low intelligence or stupid is just flat wrong. The dude is a brilliant financier. He knows how to make money. He knows where to put his money. He knows how to make moves most people don't. And that's why he's a billionaire. Facts. And there are people who are geniuses in sports and in driving cars too. My point is, this idea that you have to go to school to be educated or smart is a stupid thing that is tricking people, and that's why they're firing these Gen Z workers.
Okay, you saw that. Now, of course, some of you saying, oh, well, what do you expect? Those damn millennial and Gen Z kids, they're spoiled. Yeah, I agree. I mean, ever heard the phrase helicopter parents? Yeah, that's a thing. And unfortunately, these parents, they basically spoiled their kids. Spoiled them rotten. Because if you basically give your kid everything and they never work for anything, they ain't going to appreciate it. And therefore, as you saw in Tim's video, a lot of these kids, they're basically told to go to university. And believe me, I've read too many stories about when these kids go to university, they don't even try to get a real degree. Remember all those gender study degrees that you keep hearing about from these liberal arts colleges? Yeah. These kids going up there, spending their parents' money. And in some cases, we're ain't talking about, community college. Oh, no. We're talking about some of these good schools, like damn Harvard and Yale and Princeton and Northwestern and Vassar. I mean, really good schools, really expensive schools. And they go up there and they get some gender studies degree, some damn English literature degree, some philosophy degree. I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, seriously, if I had an adult kid that was about to go to university, I would tell him flat out, unless you plan to become a doctor, a lawyer, or at very least an engineer, don't be wasting my money going to university. That's real. Because, as you saw in Tim's video, the universities of the 21st century, the 2020, not like they were 100 years ago or even 50 years ago. Because they have a lot of bullshit degrees at a lot of these universities now. Because I remember back in the late 20th century, I remember someone was teaching, I think it was called video game theory. I think it was back in the 90s. And at first I thought, oh, it's must be some computer class, teach you how to make video games. No, it wasn't. It was a class on video games. About Pong and early Space Invaders, and Ms. Pac-Man, and a damn Galaxina, and other kinds of 16-bit games from the 80s and I guess early 90s. And I'm thinking, you're taking a class on video games? Are you kidding me? I couldn't believe it. I thought it was a joke, but it wasn't a joke. I forgot where I read that. I think it may have been in Los Angeles Times. But I think they were criticizing, the article people wrote the article was criticizing it, saying what a frivolous, why would anyone want to get such a frivolous degree? And of course, anyone who knows anything about university is that sometimes you can go to university and not take, any major. In fact, I think the term they like to use is unelected. I think that's the term they use, where you're basically just getting a general degree and no real masters in anything. And then you say, why people waste their money doing something like that? Because if you saw in Tim's video, a lot of these millennials and these Zoomers, they've been told, some cases by their parents, that you can't get anywhere without a university degree. And I will concede, yeah, in certain circumstances. But unfortunately, I think this goes back to something, a bigger problem we had in society. I mean, for example, look at journalism. Now, if you go back in time 100, 200 years, yeah, you've had journalists, but most of them didn't have college degrees. Most of them could barely read or write. And I remember reading about how some of these people basically what they call old gumshoe types. In other words, they were basically going around sniffing around looking for stories, particularly in the early 20th century. But then something happened during the second half of the 20th century. And if you wanted to get a job, like say at the New York Times, Washington Post, simply having a nose for news wasn't good enough. You had to have a degree in journalism. Why? I think the initial, because the belief was that if you actually went to school, like say Northwestern, and got a degree in journalism, the presumption was, oh, at least you know how to write. And I'm thinking, hey, you can learn how to write while going to journalism school. I mean, look at Malcolm X. Because I remember years ago, he did, I saw an interview he did, and he said that he never really went to university. And he said that he learned how to write by reading. And he read the dictionary. And by reading, he taught himself how to write. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, it's one way to do it. But the thing is, when it comes to journalism, for example, now in the present day, in the 2020s, if you try to get a job at some of these damn highfalutin, damn mainstream media organizations, we're talking CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, MSNBC, or the damn Fox News, as well as the various other publications, whether it be Politico or The Hill, or, oh my God, BuzzFeed, or Vice News. Oh, that's right, they're out of business now. They won't even look at they won't even consider you unless you have some kind of piece of sheepskin that says, I is a college student. They won't even consider your application. And that in itself shows a bit of snobbery towards people with degrees. And indeed, Dr. Steve Turley, he referred to it as the laptop classes. People who basically get a degree not because they need a degree, but it's like a kind of pedigree. And you know what? I agree. Because if you go back in time a good few centuries, back during the bad old days of English aristocracy, yeah. If you were a peasant, if you were a rag merchant's son, you had no chance of getting anywhere in the world. But if you were the gentry classes, like a baron or an earl or, oh my God, a duke, hey, you got it made. Well, in the modern day, yeah, you have that kind of a hierarchy nowadays. But it's all based on sheepskins. How many degrees you got. And we're not talking about doctors and lawyers now. We're talking about people who say, oh, I have a master's degree in rubbish, or I have a PhD in nonsense. I mean, for example, look at Jill Biden, old Sleepy Joe's wife. She has to be called Dr. Jill, except she's not a real doctor. I mean, she's got a PhD in what? Education? And I'm thinking, what? Does she actually go to actual teach a class in school, little kids? No. And I'm thinking, so what's she uses that, what's that degree for then? That way she can go around and say, I'm a doctor. Doctor my ass. You're just someone walking around with a piece of paper that says, I is a college student. You're not a real doctor. Or as the English would say, she's not a proper doctor. And that's true. And therefore, you get a situation, as you saw in Tim's video, we got a lot of these people coming out of university with these sheepskins, and let's just say this, oh yeah, they got degrees up the wazoo, but they got nothing going on up here. And of course, anyone who's seen some of these people coming out of universities with all these gender studies degrees, gender theory, critical theory, I mean, these people are beyond morons. I mean, these people couldn't even make their own coffee. Why do you think people always go to Starbucks? I mean, seriously, I'm not even joking. I bet you if you gave these people a can of coffee, Folgers, U-Man, gave them just a regular old drip coffee maker, and told them, figure it out, these people wouldn't know what to do. They say, a can of coffee? A coffee maker? And then they'll probably go on their phone and say, Alexa, how do you make coffee? I mean, these people are that pathetic. Ridiculous. Because when I worked for the post office a while back, I ran into people like that. They put these people on the sorting line with me, and these people didn't know what the hell they were doing. And I had to stop what I was doing and tell some of these young kids. These were young kids. I mean, they looked like they were like barely out of their teens. I had to sit there and show them how to sort the damn mail. Unbelievable. And I'm wondering, didn't these people pay attention during the damn orientation, or were they sitting there on their phone the whole time? I mean, really. Well, and as for, but then again, of course, you could say it's kind of like evolution. People who persevere, they survive. People who fall by the wayside, they don't. Now, of course, some of you saying, well, Darwinism, social Darwinism is kind of rough. And I agree. It is. But I have to admit, it's a good way to sort out the non-hackers, that's for sure. People who can't do it. And I'm thinking, yeah. So what will happen to these people who can't hack it? I don't rightly know. But if they come from a wealthy family, I think they'll probably land on their own feet, as long as mommy's and daddy's credit card balance holds out. But still, it is kind of sad and a testimony of how bad the university system has betrayed American society. Because back in the past, when I was a much younger person, people who went to university didn't get these bullshit degrees. People were going there to become doctors and lawyers and engineers. And of course, there were some people getting journalism degrees, and there were some people actually were getting PhDs, but those people actually were going to be college professors themselves, and that's why they were getting PhDs. But now, seems like the only reason why these people get these damn degrees is just to go around and wave it in people's faces and say, yeah, I got a college degree, nya, 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 nya. Yeah. And I remember a long time ago, someone a lot smarter than me said, yeah, that piece of paper and about $2.50 can get you maybe a small hamburger at McDonald's. Well, back in the past, not now. Not with the inflation that we got. But yeah, it's basically people just showing off. Problem is, they got that piece of paper, but their want to can't keep up with their can do. And they're being found out. No joke. So yeah, maybe when enough of these people fall by the wayside, and maybe some accountability will maybe find its way into the university system to where these damn universities will start handing out these bullshit degrees. And when someone actually shows up at a university, they'll make them learn a skill, a real skill. And not these rubbish degrees ain't worth a damn to nobody. Well, that's what I gotta say about these Gen Z knuckleheads who can't find their own ass with a damn flashlight, a Ramagnetic Road Atlas, and a GPS system. That's my opinion.